This is BowTiedOx,
And this is Mikey.
and we are bringing you episode 2 of the In Gains We Trust podcast. And oh man, do we have an episode today. I truly did not think this topic was going to be as controversial as it is. I thought it was a relative understanding, but alas, I've learned nothing in this world is simple or easy to understand, no matter how simple or easy to understand it might be. So here we are.
Yeah, leave it to the internet to overcomplicate things.
Yeah. In totality, really what we're here to talk about is, the building block of your physique, where, yes, the gym, of course, you need to do that. But what really determines specifically how good you're going to look or lack thereof, nutrition. So
Ooh.
I know. Just even saying and nutrition, I'm like, okay.
Hey, Mr. BowTiedOx, what is the fundamental building block of nutrition?
The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. I mean, that's what's. I mean, we could. There's so many ways to go into this too. I mean, really, the fundamental principle is like not to reduce food to this, but you can just kind of reduce food to this. Food is energy.
So, but it is food though, right? So food starting at the top. Food is energy, like you're saying, right?
Food. I mean, if you wanted to break it down, it's like obviously food. So calories, energy. Then the breakdown of those calories, which is going to be your macronutrients. So protein, which a brief rundown, protein is more or less it does repair in the body, repair and growth. So your body's constantly in a state of repairing or refining itself. So whether that's muscle, whether that's your cells, organs, all of it, it's repair. So protein, other stuff, but we can just look at it as like repair and building. Then we move on to, we'll save the best for last. We'll move on to fats. Then the second micronutrient is fat. So what's fat? Well, in the most simplistic terms, it is a fuel source. Depending on how your diet looks, it can be the preferred fuel source or your primary fuel source, or it can be you will store it too as well. Like obviously that's where we get into like fat, but it's also super, super, super important for things like hormones. Cholesterol, which is a lipid, a fat, is actually the building block essentially of testosterone. Then things like vitamin absorption. We have to have fat for fat soluble vitamins. So without fat, we'd go deficient and you'd die. So protein and fat. Oh, go ahead.
Not to interrupt, but you know what I found out? So just a quick aside. You know what I really recently found out was that cholesterol is technically a steroid. Did you know that?
Cholesterol. Sterol. Yeah, it's a steroid hormone. Sex hormone.
There was a multiple choice question where it was like a fake Who Wants to Be a Millionaire question, and it was like, which one of these is a steroid? And the options included insulin and cholesterol, and I'm screaming at the screen, insulin, insulin, and I was wrong. It was cholesterol, and it's like I was totally shocked by that. But
so,
fact, go on.
Vitamin D is also, it's actually technically a hormone. And I wish we had a Jamie like Joe Rogan did, because I'd be like, hey, Jamie, pull this up. I'm pretty sure it is considered a steroid hormone as well. So, or steroid sex hormone is like the classification. So, so
I did not know.
That's fat, your lipids, all that good stuff. Then let me back up. Fun fact, to survive, those are the only two you actually need for survival. But then this brings us to our third and final macronutrient.
Hold on. Before we do, I think we need a trigger warning for some in the audience. Yes.
Viewer discretion is advised.
The way you said that close to the mic, that was so good. Yeah, exactly. And can I guess?
Oh, guess.
Is it a carbohydrate?
Carbohydrate. It is a carbohydrate, which in our base state of being is actually our brain's primary source of fuel. It is muscle's primary, preferred, even source of fuel. And yeah, carbs, like where protein is kind of this build, rebuild, grow. Fat is this, we will store it, it's like an evolutionary concept. We you
Like
never know when you're going
an
to have
energy
more
store.
food, so
Right.
we're more apt. Well, that's why we store fat. You don't like, you're not sitting there like, oh, look at this stored carbohydrate on my stomach. We store fat, so it's energy preservation, and then yeah, we get into hormones and all that. But then carbs are more strictly fuel. Really, we store carbs. We store carbs in our muscles as muscle glycogen, and we store carbs in our liver as liver glycogen. But yeah, it's more of a pure fuel, which means, and people love to harp on this, that means you don't actually need it, which is true. You could totally never consume another carb. But that's why we're here today, because believe it or not, carbs can actually play a gigantic role, especially when it comes to athletic performance and muscle growth. So that's where we are. That is the gist of this. We're going to get into how much, what types, all this, the different nuances. But yeah, that's been the big topic of debate for about last week.
Yeah, and so it resulted in you getting into a debate, and the topic was really on the utility, I believe, of calories in, calories out, also known as Psycho. No, not the movie
I call it
with
Seco.
Norman Bates.
I don't
With
ever.
Psycho,
Well, it's Psycho. You stick with that. That's your thing. I call it Seco.
Psycho. That's
I
my
don't think
thing.
there's a or correct pronunciation there. But yeah. So
Yeah,
if we back it up even further, it
yeah.
wasn't even about necessarily. It ended up kind of being about macronutrients and more of this like carbs, low carb being the best way, and like almost in a sense, almost kind of, it sounded like the only way. It was a very convoluted discussion. It was a discussion that wasn't really, it was kind of talking past each other, because the base of the argument was this concept of calories in, calories out. So if we back it up, we've now said, it's kind of like the basis of diet is what you're eating, which is then your calories, and you have your macronutrients and all that. But at the end of the day, what these all constitute are this concept of calories in, calories out, or that kind of gets confused with counting calories, like as a diet model, which isn't necessarily what I mean. What it's actually saying is like net energy balance might be the better way to phrase this. And that's basically stating that essentially, if you take in more carbs, or not carbs, sorry, back that up. If you take in more calories than you burn, than your output, that the result will be weight gain. And it can be positive weight gain if you're lifting weights and you're in a small caloric surplus, a positive energy balance. And some of those calories, hopefully most of those calories, will go to actually building muscle. On the inverse, if your calories in is lower than your calories out, and this has to happen, you will lose. And I've got to be careful here, because technically you can lose weight, like in terms of water weight, without this happening by manipulating things, but you will lose fat.
Really, the idea though is across a long enough window of like observation, the concept holds true, because like you brought up already with water weight, the type of people who take in more salt content or take in more fluids, you could put on more weight, and it could trick sort of the person who's micromanaging their weight gain. But over a long enough period of time, the idea that if you burn more calories than you consume or take in
You
to your
lose fat.
system, then you will lose fat. You
Yeah,
will
because
lose.
weight, like let's say I eat a normal, regular diet, balanced diet, equal carbs, equals fats, equal protein is what we'll call it. And I then just reduce carbs, but I take in the same amount of calories. I increase protein and fat. I will actually lose weight, because carbohydrates store water. I forgot the actual given rate. I have it somewhere, but like I think it's roughly, I think it's between 2 and 4 grams of water per gram of carb. I think it's 2.4. That's a number sticking in my head, so I'm going to run with it. Fact check me, community notes. But so you would actually technically lose weight if you didn't change anything. Calories stayed the same, but you reduce carbs. But That's not to say you actually lost fat, which is a big area of confusion with this as well. Because people be like, oh, well, I immediately lost 10 pounds when I cut out carbs. And it's like, cool, like that's awesome. And then they'll be like, oh, well, now a month, whatever, I'm not losing weight. It's like, well, actually, you increased your calories, or well, you kept your calories the same, even though you reduced your carbs. So you didn't really lose fat as much as you can't expect to see these big jumps in like 10 pounds lost. Like that's, it kind of catches up. But the underlying principle here is that calories in need to be lower than calories out for fat loss to happen. Because what is fat, as we kind of got into in the beginning? That's for you.
So, well, oh wait, were you
I was like,
were you prompting me
yeah,
to ask a question?
yeah. Well, the answer was fat is stored energy. That's what I was waiting on. It's okay.
Yeah,
I understand. You're in the
sorry.
future. You're probably sleepy. My phone's going off. I'm sorry. I put it on
No, you're
silent.
good. I wanted to ask you though, what? So it sounds like a pretty straightforward thing that doesn't seem to, there doesn't seem to be any real holes in your argument. How can there really be a debate on something like this? Like, how could you steelman the other side, or was there another side, or give me an idea of what the what there is to debate about this, because it seems pretty straightforward to me.
So the debate really wasn't, ended up not being on this. I think, hopefully, because this is a law. This is a law of physics. This is the law of thermodynamics about energy balance. It was on how we achieve an energy balance, and there's merit to it. So if someone is obese and they have insulin issues, well, or different hormone issues, it's going to be smarter in a lot of cases to actually, when you initially approach weight loss, to eat lower carb, because they have an issue managing insulin, which can be very, very true. To dispute that would literally be kind of dumb, which I wouldn't dispute, which is why that wasn't really my argument. My argument was you just need to be in a caloric deficit. So that was more or less kind of the point, is like, well, it doesn't matter that people know they need to be in a caloric deficit. How are they going to do it? And for some people, this is the way they should do it. Um, which is kind of, that's just, at that point, it was talking past each other. But
Yeah. So okay. So I think I have a better grasp of it. So it seems like there was some like hyperbolic state, because what I remember actually from my observation was that the thing that set this whole thing off was that there was like some statements, like hyperbolic overstating of stating that calories in, calories out was like a nonsense concept, basically, which left a lot of room open for or actually a proper interpretation, but it would end up being a misinterpretation. But the interpretation, nonetheless, being that this concept, which is backed up by the first law of thermodynamics, is bunk. And so it set off a lot of people, not just you, and it set off a lot of people. And I think it was that was the kind of the desired outcome, right? Because this was meant to stir up controversy, successfully did so. And then when it came time to the actual discussion, it shifted to, I believe, a low carb type of thing, which it always seems to be that, like, anytime somebody throws out some crazy bait on social media, it always ends up being like one of these groups, and one of those groups being, in this case, like the low carb or carnivore people. They've always got some sort of like baity way of stirring up a debate, and then at the very last moment they go, yeah, but we just prefer low carbs, we think it's better. It's like, you know what I mean?
yeah, and that's kind of a thing I was talking about today as of recording this, today and yesterday. I think it's Tuesday the 19th. And that is like sugar, and then on a more broad spectrum, carbohydrates role in obesity. Excuse me, which I don't really, it misses a huge picture. And what's kind of funny is a argument that keeps on coming back is, well, this low carb diet is better for people that aren't active and don't exercise. And then to me, that it's like, you're kind of saying the quiet part out loud. So you're saying there's other issues here, because pretty well founded in the science and the data that and however you want to qualify health, but we're going to qualify health as like it's actually hard to qualify it, but we're going to say someone that's more in tune and in harmony with how the body naturally should be, right? We'll kind of leave it at that. For someone to actually reach what would be considered healthy, not healthier than their current state, but a healthy lifestyle, a healthy person, to do that without good activity levels and without exercise, I'm going to venture to say it doesn't really happen. You're going to need activity. Like whether you
Mhm.
go to the gym or not, you should. If you're not in this, like an extreme example would be some intensive labor job where you're lifting heavy stuff and all that. That person maybe is able to get away with not traditional weightlifting resistance training because they're getting that from their profession or whatever. But if you're just, a normal person in an office, like most people, with no type of physical resistance, like you're going to need to exercise. I think it's the physical guidelines for Americans states that we need 150 minutes of exercise with 2 days of weightlifting or of strength training as the
Mhm.
basis for being healthy to achieve a level of health, however you're going to qualify it. If you're going to qualify it kind of in this stance of what we're saying, because that's actually like kind of a good point to make. It's like, what is healthy? Which there's a very nuanced thing, but I would say where your body's kind of in a more natural state with how it should work, where it's not really working against you. You're kind of in a good natural state. Would you agree, or what would you call healthy?
Yeah, that's actually what it's one of those questions where it's like you think you know because it feels obvious, and then like somebody asks you it, and you're asked to define this thing, and you're like, well, I
It's
don't
like
know how to describe it. It's sort of that feeling you get when you take your take your special gal to the drive-in theater and you get a malt. Um, uh, no, healthy. I mean, I think I've heard a lot of people give these like answers on social media that I really like. Where they say like they give certain metrics like you should be able to X, Y, and Z, and there's like a certain number of like things they give like you should be able to do this many push-ups, and you should be able to body squat or deadlift your body weight and stuff like. I thought these metrics are pretty clever. I don't know how much merit they have on like a on a on a like a technical basis or whatever, but I tend to like these ways of these metrics.
yeah.
But was that rhetorical, or were you asking for
No,
a
no,
real?
no. There's
Oh,
no,
okay.
because yeah, those are good ways to test that. They're like it can be tested to a degree, and there's also things like grip strength you can even look at and stuff like that. But
Yeah, I've heard about this.
to not be redundant and not keep everyone here for an hour debating what is healthy, I kind of my thing I'll stick with is that your body's in a more natural state that is productive for existing, that you're not going to run into a bunch of health issues. You're not going to, your body's working for you than against you. So that's where these conversations get really like just looking at weight loss as a metric for health, because you can starve yourself, not go to the gym or do anything, you'll lose weight. But is that a healthy person? You sit inside all day, you don't move, you don't do anything, but you're able to lose weight because you starve yourself. Like, is that a healthy person? Do we look at someone that's malnourished and say, oh, you're healthy? So there's more that goes into it, which is going to be, and that's kind of the big point here. It's going to be, I mean, you can get as niche as like your light viewing behavior. Are you getting too much artificial light? Are you getting enough direct sunlight? Are you sleeping well? What's your
Is your
hormone
point
environment?
is your point that it's a bit like subjective?
No, the point is that to reduce diet and just like the causes of obesity and like the causes of unhealthiness, to reduce that to one thing, like, oh, just don't eat carbs and you'll be healthy. It's kind of like, or that's the sole issue is carb consumption or sugar consumption.
Right.
It's just
Right. It
missing
feels that
some.
way. Even if they don't intend to do that, it does feel that way, that that's the message, that there's this sort of magic bullet or something like that that is, it feels reductionist. I mean, you get that feeling too, right? I mean,
Yeah, I don't like to reduce nuanced concepts that are important, because there is a point where like you can get too nuanced and it's like, okay, calm down. Like, just, we generally get the point. But whenever you take something as multifaceted as obesity and health and you try to reduce it to just one cause, when it's Like I was looking at some of the data, and it's like sugar consumption's actually down. Things like highly processed oil consumption's up. So it's like, and obesity rates, as we know,
Yeah, like
are
which is
up.
it?
So it's like,
Yeah.
oh, well, then, and it's like, and I would, so then a reduction, if I want to be really reductionist, I would be like, oh, well, actually, it's these highly processed oils. That's it. Like, that's rising and obesity is rising. That's it. But I wouldn't reduce it to that because it's like, no, that can play a big part. Sure. Sugar consumption can play a big part. Sure. Sedentary activity can play a big part. Sure. Not exercising. Yes. Like not sleeping well. All of this. It's all a big picture. And I don't ever want to reduce health to weight loss because that's missing a whole picture. It's a
You
big
could be
part.
really unhealthy and lose weight.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I mean that goes without saying. I mean that should go without saying. I mean there are some a lot of drug addicts who are really great at losing weight.
yeah. I always, the topic I always bring up is like Ranger School, 62 days. You eat 2 MREs a day, which I'll call them 1,200 calories, some of them more, some of them actually less. And you're moving. I wouldn't know how, you don't have like a steps tracker or whatever, but to quantify it, but like miles and miles and miles and miles and miles, not sleeping and all that. You are in one of the most guys when they get back will have, they will be hypogonadal with their testosterone levels. Like they will be, they will be near zero, but they lose a bunch of weight. So that would be like, oh, well, that was healthy. It's like, absolutely not. Guys, like their joints are, like your joints just hurt. Your things like sex drive. You have absolutely no sex drive. You don't feel good.
Have
So
you ever seen the guys who come off of the Appalachian Trail?
I have a buddy that did. He actually didn't make it. he he. I want to say is rhabdo. I want to say he got rhabdo. I don't know the actual technical.
What is
He
rhabdo for the audience and
it's
me?
basically whenever
Yeah.
your rate of muscle protein breakdown um, exceeds your rate to rebuild it. So basically, you're just your body's in a state of like breaking down, and it's
Oh,
super
it's like
hard on your
constant
kidneys.
catabolic.
Yeah, and it's over a long term, you can just be catabolic and lose muscle, but like on an acute, when it happens at this really high rate, you rhabdomyosis, and it's bad. Oh, it's bad. You the way most people know they have it is their urine will be brown. It's not a good thing. So he
Yeah.
had well, I don't know if it was necessarily rhabdo or whatever, but he was peeing blood, and that's when he made the sat phone call out or however he did it. And it was like, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. Like I'm done.
Jesus.
But he lost a bunch of weight, so
Yeah,
it
he
was
lost.
healthy, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's like it wasn't the berries that he ate either.
The berries.
That was blood.
It wasn't those shrooms
um,
that he found in the cow pasture.
it wasn't actually red. He just saw it red. It was rainbow. No, so actually, so you brought up something about like how you have to also be like moving. You have to be it's and I think where a lot of people will get confused, or maybe where calories in, calories out seems to be at least not useful, is when people who aren't very active, their systems sort of react to this in a way that is almost I think our systems like respond differently in terms of like our hormones and the metabolic rate, for example, which can all play a role in calories outside of things, because the
Yeah.
calories in, I think everybody understands calories in for the most part, but I think the calories outside of things is where people uh, lose faith in the calories in, calories out concept, or rule, we should say. And it's there's so many reasons why they may, but I think is it fair, do you think, then, to say that like across a long enough period of time that you do see the proper effects of calories in, calories out? Because like I said, they have that different metabolisms and stuff like that, and your hormones can be affected by the type of diet you have. It so all those, and the type of thermogenesis processes. And but I guess the point is, these things play around with the rate of calories outside of things. So if somebody might be taking in the same amount of calories, but on the in portion, but then the calories out portion can be variable based on all sorts of things, the types of foods, even your stress levels and stuff like that. So Is that, do you think that's why, in other words, people get that, lose faith in calories in, calories out?
I think so, because a big argument against calories in, calories out will be, oh, so you're just saying a calorie is a calorie, which is false. On a You can get actually pretty literal with this, and there is a point where a calorie is a calorie to a degree in an extreme situation. Like if you're eating just not good food, it's like I'll bring back. I mean, I don't. Every ranger does this. They just keep on bringing up ranger school. It's just what we do. I'm sorry, but um,
Yeah.
that's a good example of like that's not a healthy way to do it. But at its sheer point, if your calories out are higher than your calories in, really regardless of what your calories in look like, you will lose weight. But for the practicality of this conversation, to answer your question, it does matter. Your calories in matter. Like I brought this up that protein has a thermic effect, meaning you use it up in digesting and processing it of 30% of the total calories from the protein, where carbs and fat are like 1 to 5, even I've seen 0 to 5% thermic effect. So then that's obviously, if we're taking in more protein, we're actually then increasing the calories out because it has a higher thermic effect. So you have that plays into it. Then, yeah, like depending on your hormone profile, like your quality and type of food matters. And that's where, yeah, for some people, especially with insulin resistance, where we're going to see more success lowering carbohydrate intake. Still, it's not negating this net energy balance. It needs to be net negative for the fat loss to happen, but there's better, we can set it up in a way that the system's more efficient. It doesn't negate the system. It's further proving the system's existence in the first place, but there's a better way to manage it. And there's better foods to eat that are going to be better for our hormone profiles. There's better things to do. Getting good quality sleep is going to, it's actually going to regulate your appetite to a degree. It's going to lower hormones that make you hungry, and it's going to raise hormones that make you feel satiated. So that's a big part of it. And then, yeah, in short, without getting so nerdy with it, calories in affects calories out, and so do other lifestyle things. So I think that's why people get conflated with this, because if you really reduced it to just like, oh, I'm going to eat like 2,000 calories of like cookies versus, oh, I'm going to eat 2,000 calories of beef, rice, potatoes, eggs, things like that. Yeah, you're going to see just a massive difference between those. So I think that's where the point gets a little bit conflated, but it's not actually negating anything, which is kind of like,
I think,
that's,
yeah.
that's why it feels redundant. Like, because it's like this thing has to happen in the background. There's better ways to do it, but like,
But I think that, like, I think the message, see, the thing is, if we're talking about two people who know their stuff, and it's just two people in a room who want to talk about the nuances of this topic, one person's coming at it from calories are the only thing that matters, or just, calorie counting is good. I could defend that point, and the other side is coming at it from, a different perspective. Um, that's all great. That's okay. Just have the discussion. Let's, because the nuances I'm even listening to now, they're really interesting. Um, that's all well and good, but I think where I'm seeing a bit of an issue is the kind of the way that this is being presented to a broad audience who is kind of taking the people's word for it. They don't have the time to look into these things. Maybe they're kids, maybe they're teenagers or whatever. And I think that from somebody who's not really well versed in this stuff, I see it as a bit of it's more dangerous to tell someone that calories in, calories out is wrong or bad for you. It's a terrible, that negation, I think, is worse, because once you throw out that principle, I think that everything else kind of collapses around it, because now you're just reliant on basically fads, or fads from an authoritative figure. So now your only option is to trust somebody that you've deemed as being authoritative. And I think it's better to have a grasp of the fundamentals from the ground up. And I think that's the calories in, calories out is the ground level. That is the foundation of the topic. That's the thing that everything else springs from. And so my issue when I was observing this from a third party this discussion, this debate, it really did come across like one side was trying to invert a well understood law of reality, and then at the last moment slip in sort of the well, actually it's quite nuanced and I agree with you mostly. It's like, wait a second, you know,
Yeah.
leading up to this, it sounded like you were saying that calories don't even exist. So that's from my perspective. I think that people need to be a little bit more careful, because if it's two professionals, like I already said, that's one thing. But you have an audience of people who are impressionable, and they might get the wrong idea, and it could be bad.
Yeah, because I don't see any downside of acknowledging energy balance, calories in, calories out. There's like, because this is, and this will lead us into what we're going to talk about here is, so cool. You do have success initially by you just ignore these principles and whatever. But how do we go from here? Like, now we're okay, cool. We've lost all this weight. You can argue like, cool, now we can worry about all this stuff. Or it's like, or we could have understood it and now we've kind of practiced it, even if we didn't knowingly practice it, even if we were only focusing on like carbohydrate intake and we reduce it and we lose weight and all that. But in the back of our heads, we know, oh, I lost this weight because I was in a caloric deficit. And that's fine. Full stop. We're good. Now going forward, you now have an idea of how these principles work,
Right.
and we can manipulate
With
it.
context.
This leads me to an issue I deal with daily, and this is why I'm pretty passionate about it, is the amount of people daily that are like, oh, I thought all carbs were evil, and so I avoided them. And even after I lost all my weight, I still avoided them. And then, because now we're kind of getting into this, okay, maybe you needed to get yourself in a healthier place, but now you want to build upon this concept of health. You want to start hitting the gym. You want to start being active. You want to start, even if it's just like going on runs, going on a bunch of walks, hiking, picking up a hobby sport, whatever. And you're starting like, people will come to me and be like, I thought I couldn't eat carbs and all this, but then I started eating carbs, and oh, in the gym, my strength skyrocketed. I felt better. I started growing better. Oh, I just had more energy when I was going out on my runs. I was doing this. And I genuinely thought, because all I ever hear is the one side of the argument that carbs are bad. And to me, that's why I like the whole picture being painted. I don't want to cherry pick little nuances. Like, let's actually look at the whole picture. Let's not reduce it. Let's actually look at all the things that matter, because then that's actually empowering to people's knowledge and their education. So now going
Yeah.
forward, we understand these concepts, because that's a big part of muscle growth. Can you grow muscle without taking in carbs? Absolutely. Absolutely. Get your protein in, do all that, you will grow. But, and I'm not sure anyone really serious would debate this, is your rate of muscle growth going to be equal to the, say you have a twin and you're in the same exact position, one of you doesn't eat carbs, one of you eats carbs, and you both lift the same way, same intensity, same volume, all of it, the person eating carbs will be bigger, they will make more progress, full stop. I don't really know many people that argue like, to
Yeah,
the
well,
degree that
you say that.
bodybuilders, like pro bodybuilders,
Right, of course.
will take exogenous, meaning they will inject insulin because insulin is the most anabolic hormone in the body.
But that's what makes bodybuilders such an interesting element to this, to a lot of these discussions, because you could look at bodybuilders, because it's a competitive atmosphere. You could basically look at the bodybuilder as sort of the purest distillation of the best practices to get as big as possible. Because let's say a bodybuilder found out that all fat, all protein diet was optimal,
Every single one
they
of them.
would all jump on it like yesterday.
Every single one of them.
Because they all want to win a competition. So we have an inbuilt sort of social laboratory with these professional bodybuilders. So that's one knock against
And
the
it's not small business either. It's not small business.
No,
Millions,
it's not.
millions. It's a billions of dollar industry.
Maybe billions, yeah.
Billions, yeah. So it's like, I'm not going to just say on a generalized blanket statement that everything bodybuilders are doing, you should do, because obviously we do know there's some things that bodybuilders are doing at the high levels that you listener, you listen to me closely, you shouldn't be doing it. Say no to
There's an
trend.
audience?
Oh God, I forgot people listen to us. Say no to trend.
Where am I?
But no, for like the very basis, yeah, like whatever kind of bodybuilder, look at it like a natural bodybuilder. If that's the qualification you want, look at what they're doing. Like, and it's going to
Now,
look a certain way.
yeah,
You're going to start seeing certain things pop up that work. And that's another thing that gets reduced. It's like, well, you're saying this because my big thing is don't be overgeneral and be like low carb's the best for everyone. But and they'll be like, you bodybuilders and athletes are just such a niche population. Well, if one, it's not as like this super outlier group as you think. It's millions of people. Like what,
yeah,
1% of the population be 3 million people. I'm going to say more than, I'm going to say tens of millions of people are fit in America. Like I know it's not as many as it should be, but tens of millions are likely fit. Or 80 to 90% of people are metabolically unhealthy to varying degrees, which still means that 10 to 20% of people are metabolically healthy, which is 30 to 60, 70 million people. I think probably closer to 80 million on what updated numbers are going to look like.
yeah.
So 20%, 80 million people. So that means, sure, your advice is going to work for a lot of people, but there is 80 million people who this advice isn't necessarily going to be the best for them. And even if it is niche, just to say it is the only way is just categorically false. So that's why we kind of have to approach this with nuance. And that's my big thing is understand context, understand what's best for you, and run with that. Let's not make blanket statements when health and fitness is a very individualized. Let's not make blanket statements. That's my only argument. So I don't know why people hate me when I make these statements. Stop hating me, for God's sake. I
The
am on your
fitness
side.
industry, yeah.
I am on
Yeah,
your side.
that's the thing is like I bet you a lot of these people, if you got into a discussion, would agree on most things, but there would be some like nuances
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But yeah, but a lot of it has a lot of platitudes or whatever you call them, like hyperbole is used. Just so that's the nature of
There's
social
big
media.
money in hedging your method is the best method. We'll put it
Yeah,
that way. There's big money in if
exactly.
you have the unique solution to a big problem. So that's
So here's something though, and tell me if this makes sense. Shoot me down if it doesn't. Feel free. Um, a lot of carnivores and low carb guys, I know a ton of them also take creatine. What do they think is the purpose of creatine? What's the benefit of creatine that carbs don't give? Because if my understanding, and you've
I have no
already
idea
touched
where you're
on this,
going
is
here, but
you get what I'm going. Like carbs, I mean, the whole point of creatine is to get what is it,
ATP,
creatine phosphate,
ADP,
ATP.
adenine diphosphate into adenine triphosphate. Yeah.
Thank you. Energy, and a lot of it has to do with storing water in the muscles,
Part of it, yeah.
and so the point of having carbs is storing water in the muscles. So
It's
it's
not
like,
necessarily one for one, but I get where you're
but
going. That it's an
the
enhancer, performance
right,
enhancing in a
right.
natural way. Before creatine is not trend. So I know if your moms are, hi mom, I know you're listening to this. Creatine is not a drug. All right, it's in red meat and meat naturally. So I'm not. Creatine's not drugs, mom. Um, but yeah, she's actually our
No,
biggest fan. She loved last episode, by the
yeah,
way.
my mom is too. Actually, I think they're the only two that watch this.
I'm pretty sure they are. So hi.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, Wait. So, but the concept though, the idea behind like sort of the reason you would take creatine is to improve performance in the gym, and it's the same concept with carbs, but they're adamant not to do that.
It
So
just
it's
comes
like,
down to their preference and goals, though. I'm not going to knock carnivores or keto if it works for them and their goals. I'm so happy if it does work for your goals. My only position is that it's not the only way to do things. Full stop. So that's why it kind of gets crazy. I get attacked because the way the pendulum swings on social media, I'm like a high carb guy, and it's like, it's funny. I actually was going to tweet about this. For some of the postpartum things, like the women, well, my wife had diastasis, which is like your abs kind of split, and then some of the looser skin and all that. So guess what kind of diet plan I just wrote up for her? You'll never believe this.
low carb.
It's low carb. So it's kind of crazy. Like I'm willing to use all the tools. That's all it is. It's
Yeah.
tools in a toolbox, and use the right tool for you. So how I boil that down is, how do you prefer to eat? Like, what is a way that you can stick with a diet? You enjoy your diet. Food's a huge part of our lives. It's cultural. It's everything. So how
I
what's a good
where
way?
Yeah. No, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, it's like, so what's a way that you like to eat? You can adhere to. It's cool. Okay, cool. Check that box. Does that help you get to your goals? What are your goals? So if your diet then lines up with your preference and your goals, cool, we're good to go. Then, final part, important to me, does this diet promote good health? Because if your goal is your preference is eat whatever you want, your goal is to you don't care, and but your health outcome is, oh, you're unhealthy. Even though the first two line up, I'm not sure, because that third one's slightly important to me. But hey, I'm going to be honest, and I'm not going to act like on a pedestal, or like on, I'm not going to act holier than thou. Not everyone cares about this stuff, and I wish they would, because we both know how good this is for you and how good it makes you feel and how good your life is when you're healthy. But let's be real, some people don't care. We have to acknowledge that too in these kind of debates. Some people don't care. Like, they literally don't
That's
care.
why that's why I'm a bit I think I'm a bit more extreme than you in this, because you said that, whatever, works for you, happy for you. I'm more like, I want to convert more people to be off of the low carb diets, and not for the people who, for the reasons that, the insulin, people who are, what is it, insulin sensitive, is that the right way of putting it?
Resistant. They're resistant
Resistant,
to
right?
insulin. Yeah.
Not for that. I'm talking more so who I'm trying to convince not to dive into this are the people who are really into fad diets, where they hear something new and they go, and they're like a dog chasing like the mailman or whatever. It's like they find a fad, it sounds neat, and they want to just like, they want to jump in, and for no other reason besides it's a fad. I want to dissuade these people from doing this. I'd prefer that they were more foundational. I know you agree with me on this, but I think it needs to be said that I think they should look towards people who are more foundational, maybe like you and I, and and then build up from there, and then understand it enough to make decisions for themselves. I think that the carnivore, I like a lot of carnivores. Don't get me wrong. My best friend's a carnivore, so I can't be carnivorist. So no, yeah. So I I think that there are a lot of people who jump into these things, and I think that it could just lead them down a path that is, dare I say, suboptimal.
Oh God. No,
I
well,
said, I said
where I don't like it is, where I guess you could say I try to dissuade people, is by point two, when it doesn't align with their goals. So they're sold this line of thinking and this diet, because there's a lot of marketing for this, like a ton. Like,
yeah,
there's not a big marketing push behind, hey, let's have a balanced diet. Like, let's have some rice because it's gonna help you in the gym. If like you're metabolically healthy and you can handle it, like, have some rice. No one's saying that. And so it's like, oh well, here's why athletes even should have no carbs. And it's kind of like, if you're around athletes and bodybuilders, you're like, okay, well, who are these people? Because I sure as hell don't know them. So
yeah,
I try
yeah.
to bring that kind of middle ground and be like, well, hey, I want you to understand the total nuance here. And if you're metabolically healthy and you actually like to eat carbs and stuff, you don't you and you want to grow and you want to do great in the gym and all that, you don't need to be afraid of this for no reason, because there's a very good chance you'll be fine. You will be fine. Like, you'll be better than fine. Because I like to even look at like downstream effects of things, and where people are like, well, you just don't need carbs. I'm gonna argue, and it's a little bit pedantic, but there's actually really good downstream effects of having carbs because of the enhanced rate of muscle growth, especially as we age. Um, Muscle wasting is actually one of the biggest uh, factors of predictive factors of mortality. Um, I'm going to
Muscle
get roasted
wasting,
for this.
meaning what
See,
again?
I try to avoid the actual word, because the last time I got roasted because I didn't know how to pronounce something because I've already
Okay.
read it.
Atrophy,
Sarcopenia.
atrophy, atrophy.
Sarcopenia.
Oh no, you.
Um,
Oh, that's
okay, did
even
I
bigger word.
yeah,
Okay, thank you.
sarcopenia, which is losing muscle over time. Huge predictive factor of early mortality. So if you can then take advantage of insulin in a responsible way, and you can build muscle, or it's helping you build muscle at an enhanced rate. And then, as we know, building muscle also in strength training increases your bone density and all this. So then I can make the argument, if it's helping you grow, it's actually helping. And then, oh, back up, muscle is actually amazing for your metabolic. Muscle is just metabolically active. It is like, it is such a large part of metabolism. So the more muscle you have, better insulin sensitivity, you're more metabolically healthy. Um, you're going to be more bone density. All these factors that I would argue, okay, actually these carbs are a very good net. positive. You didn't necessarily need them, but is it giving this person a boost? Um, sure. I'm not sure there's even a study on this. And I don't really, I mean, I read studies, I do that, but I also like to use my brain, some common sense, some little anecdotal evidence. And I would say there's a lot of anecdotal, if not some real data, that there's a no, this is a known benefit. So it's one of those things that
Right.
I just there's not people aren't thinking second, third, fourth weight order of effects. They're it just gets very binary. I hate binary.
Right. Right.
I'm non-binary. Come on. Um so
Yeah, same. You know, it's funny because this has become kind of like a main. It's been. Have you noticed this as well? That this has been a bit more mainstream. The idea that, especially as you age, I think into your 60s and 70s, I think they're really they're really stressing rather the importance of actual resistance training for people as they get into their 60s, 70s, and beyond. This is what because actually I was speaking to some some older family members of mine, and we were just talking about this the other day, and totally clued into the benefits of resistance training for people as they age. And I was surprised by that because I thought this was sort of our world, on social media and maybe from the kind of stuff we consume and read. But to see somebody who's on the outside of the internet culture or whatever, for them to also be receiving the same messages of what's really healthy for people as you age, which is muscle, having resistance training and having muscle mass. I think that's fantastic. I don't know if you've noticed that or seen that as well,
it's
but
spilling over like our
yeah,
culture. Everyone's so plugged, even if they're not on social media, they're not on Twitter X, TikTok, it's everywhere now. I think it's bleeding into the mainstream, which is great, which it's actually something I'm very, very, very passionate about now. So this, I haven't really publicly said it because I don't really want a pity party, but so my grandpa just got diagnosed with dementia, right? Well, do you know what is actually one of the biggest preventative things you can do for dementia?
must be resistance training. Yeah.
Resistance training. So it improves parts of the brain, the hippocampus, and it actually can offset like pretty great. I have tweeted about it. I'm actually sitting here looking for my tweet. I posted a study, but it was like one bout of weight training, like the effects that it can stave off from neurological decline is actually pretty substantial. So I'm happy to see this. Like, think this is also something I think about a lot. So a fall, like I don't think people realize this. If you've gone through it, you realize it. I actually just went through it last year with my grandma. A fall for an older person that could be it. Or it can happen, and what happens from the fall, the broken hip and all that, that can be the beginning of the end.
Yeah.
Like they don't come
It's
back
yeah.
from that. So resistance training, what's that doing? One, bone density. So if they do fall, hopefully they don't break the hip. Their bones are more dense because they have been doing, and resistance training can be bands. It can be body weight. Like I know as you get older, if you're starting older, you can be limited. And that's why machines can be great for that because obviously they're not going to be pushing P. They're not going to be sitting there needing to load up a hack squat. You know what I mean? They can use these very safe assisted machines on these fixed planes of motion on it. It's like that's like a perfect case use for those.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I had to throw push and P in there to be with the culture. Hopefully we can go viral on TikTok. Um, but
That went right
like,
over my head.
Young Thug's lawyer said that pushing P stands for pushing positivity. So that's a side
Oh,
note you
okay.
might not get. That's going to go over your head too.
Oh, right.
I'm in with the culture.
My
Um,
boomer credentials are showing.
but so resistance training for them. So if they fall, cool, more bone density. Then we get into things like coordination. So you're going to be less likely to fall if you have better balance and coordination because, well, you actually have these muscles and you've built these, don't shoot me, stabilizers and different things like that have been worked and all these. So the fall becomes less likely. And then now you have the neurological protection of it, which also creatine, as we've mentioned, is actually neuroprotective as well. So there's another little tidbit. So you have all these just amazing benefits. So I'm super happy people are doing it. The only issue I see is like knowledge is power, but only if you use it. And it's so hard to get like a family member to actually really make that change. they can know it's good for them, and if they don't do it, that can be so infuriating, like just
Yeah.
heartbreaking, honestly. Because
Yeah.
when you have our knowledge of health and fitness, and you kind of get to a point where you can kind of start predicting what's going to happen to people. You can kind of predict some of the issues they're going to run into and all that. I see it with family members. You're just kind of like, well, that could have been prevented if, your diet, you did a little bit better here. If you would have been exercising, going on more walks, resistance training, like this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
So it kind of gets disheartening, not to like side tangent that, but
What
that's
is do you I've thought about this a lot. I've thought about this pretty deeply. Like it really becomes then what we are about doing or trying to do, like, instill change or positive change. It really then becomes like a game of like behavioral, uh not manipulation, but like it's almost like cognitive behavioral therapy, but like from a family member perspective, where you have to start at like, on the it's very difficult is kind of what I'm trying to get at
if I
here, but
figure it out, I'll publish it for free.
yeah.
If I'll publish it for free, I will let everyone know. I will I'll lose money blasting it out
Yeah,
because
seriously, no, because it is like it's very behavioral, and it's tough to get people to make these changes.
and that's
Yeah.
sorry, I cut you off a little bit.
No, no, you
I've
go
been
ahead.
so good at that. I'm so bad, on the phone doing that. I try to be so much better here.
No, no, you're fine.
I'm
I was actually
flawed.
done.
I'm
You
flawed. But
yeah.
yeah. Oh my God. I was going to say side tangent. My mom was really proud of me because she said I did really good on not just blurting things out. But yeah, it's one of those things, dude. It is so, she's listening. She is hi, mom, you are one of these people that I just harp on, harp on, harp on. And it's incremental progress. And she does a really good job. She's receptive, but she's more receptive than almost anyone else. And it can be just you're
It's really
headbutting a
difficult.
wall. You're
It
headbutting a
really
wall at
is.
times. And
Yeah.
so, and that's one of the things actually goes back to the whole debate on low carb is that can actually help through hormone change and all that. That can help drive these behavioral changes. But that's the biggest part is this behavioral change. What actually is going to move the needle here? What is actually going to get? I can hear my son yelling in the back. I hope he has a cameo here. Um, but these behavioral changes are
Yeah.
what drives everything. So, and that's a big part of diet too, when it gets to adherence, because like for me, I have tried low carb, I've tried stuff like this. I can't do it. I just don't like it. Honestly, like I don't like it. I hate looking flat and lose like a mental edge a little bit where I'm like, oh yeah, ooh, I'm looking really good. That motivation that comes with it, that's going to drive you to want more and more results and all this.
Yeah.
Um, so that's one reason I don't like it. So like behavioral like that, you really have to start looking at factors like that. So this behavioral model that's why for a coach, I would say something you really need to learn if you want to get into this endeavor is really learn how to what makes people work, what makes them tick, and if
Right.
you can tap into that, that's why one-on-one coaching works way better than just like broadcasting information like we're doing. If you can tap into that, and you can I don't want to use the word manipulation because we're not using our forces for evil here. We're trying to use our forces for a good thing. But if you can tap into that and almost manipulate them into good decisions, you're doing a huge net positive. So that's something too for coaches. It's like, hey, like you're really kind of a psychologist. You're kind of a
I
therapist.
wonder I wonder if that's what the low carb thing's all about. To
Part of
give
it,
them like to lend an olive branch, really. Maybe it's just like the it's partly sort of like, here, change this one thing and watch the magic happen. It's
that
like,
huge initial weight loss, like if
yeah,
you've been eating carbs,
exactly.
that 10 pounds, that can be momentum. No, that's huge. Like
Right.
that's why I
Right.
don't
Yeah.
argue against these things. I don't think they're bad things. I think it's all neutral. It's all just a tool that you use to get a net result. So it's one of those things that, yeah, if you just have to drive behaviors. I'm the same way. Don't know if you are, but when things are going good and like I'm seeing progress in the gym, I'm seeing progress with my diet, I'm seeing all that, like it has this compounding effect on your motivation and your discipline. And discipline is obviously, you don't need motivation to be disciplined, but I would be lying if I said that it's not easier to be disciplined when you're very motivated. It's so much easier. Like when things are clicking and they're all going good, how hard is it to be like, oh, I got to go to the gym today? You're like, I cannot wait to go to the gym. I can't wait to have another day of good dieting. So a lot of it's momentum. That's to
So true.
me, I'm a momentum person. When I start seeing changes and I start seeing a lot of progress and all that, and that's a big thing why I'm a proponent of like tracking weights and diet too, but especially weight because it becomes tangible, or weight in the gym. Sorry, well, weight on the scale too, but that can be kind of that can get fucky because you might, especially for newbies,
Yeah, no, definitely.
you might be trying to lose weight. Next thing you know, it's like I'm gaining weight. I didn't want to gain weight, but you're gaining muscle. But like tracking your weight in the gym, I love that because it's becomes this like game, this mental game for me that if I see those numbers going up in my head, I'm like, cool, I'm growing. It's progressive overload, just like we talked
Yeah,
about last episode. You're
right,
like,
right,
cool,
right.
I was in the right hypertrophic conditions and my weight and reps, either or both, went up. Cool. I'm growing. Sorry, I'm getting a lot of background noise from I've got dogs and children, so
It's not bad on my end, just so
okay,
you know.
cool.
Um,
But yeah, the
but that's a
momentum.
good tie into the last episode because that is what we left off on, which was progressive overload. And
What's
yeah, it's one of those, like you said, compounding motivational things. And you know, um, just just to recap the conversation that we've had today is, you know, if that is something that can get the ball rolling for you, meaning the low carb or even carnivore, or whatever approach works for you, even if it's a quote fad, um, momentum is a huge part of it. And so, you know, if that's what you need, that's great. But you should definitely also seek out, if you are willing to seek out sort of the underlying mechanisms at work that are result giving you the results that you want, so that you can then, you know, kind of understand yourself as a system better, what you respond best to and why, so that you don't end up developing all sorts of, like you've mentioned earlier, all sorts of like you know, hang-ups, I guess, with food and stuff like that. So
yeah, knowledge is power. That's always what I say.
yeah,
So you're never going to be hurting someone by giving them more knowledge. If knowledge is power, giving people more knowledge is empowering. So that's how I look at it. Do you necessarily, when you just start, do you need to understand these advanced concepts of thermodynamics and all this? You don't need to. They can help. And I will argue to the day I'm dead till I'm blue in the face that understanding this concept of calories in calories out as the principal basis of weight loss and fat loss, that's good to know. How you get there, again, up to you, but it's good to know. And then building on that, so then knowledge is power. So now you start learning, oh, so protein, like high protein, okay, here's the benefits here. Okay, eating more whole foods, okay, here's the benefits here. Oh, hey, cutting out some of these high inflammatory foods, okay, there's some benefits there. Like some people have autoimmune issues and they'll notice, okay, cut out inflammatory foods, okay, that's getting better. And all that, what do you think happens? Ties right back into what we said: momentum. I'm feeling better, I'm looking better, momentum. So all these things are just little tidbits of knowledge, of power, that is empowering people then to be able to really, because my goal as a coach has never been, let me get people to rely on me. Let me like, let me be your authority on this information. I want everyone that's ever listened to me, I want to interest them. I want to give them this base of knowledge. And then I hope all of them one day get to the point where they're, when it comes to how am I training, oh, I'm going to program my workouts the way I respond best to workouts. How are you going to diet? Oh, I'm going to program my own diet. They understand these things. They don't need someone to kind of guide them along the way. They just know how to do it. To me, that's like the best end result, because that's a mastery of your own body, of your own health and fitness. So that's why I'm big on this, not being reductionist and not leaving the stones unturned. I really want people to know everything and everything that goes into it, especially the basic principles. That way, they can then be in charge and take control of their own health and fitness. I think that's the beautiful, most beautiful outcome you can get working in this industry, bringing someone to that point.
I think that's probably a great place to end off that on that sentiment.
Yeah, what's funny is we had this like, okay, here's what we'll talk about. Here's all this. We touched on a lot of it. Uh, we could have went a little bit more into like the building muscle, losing fat, like how to set up diet and all that. But I think it's not like this is our last episode. I plan on doing this with you until I'm 60. So we'll have many more.
60, yeah, 60, and we'll both have start having dementia.
Oh God, too soon.
What
I'm
was
just
that?
kidding.
Resistance training? Sorry, buddy.
Too soon. I'm kidding. No, I think next episode. I don't really think we have a clear cut.
I don't have anything planned, but
nothing planned. I think
I think maybe getting into like program building might be something.
program
Is that
building.
interesting to you?
Yeah, we'll be fresh on the topic because last week was crazy, but going into building the program I'm putting out, that's going to be happening very soon. I keep on saying that, but it's actually, I promise you. Yeah, I think, I don't know where we're going. I don't know what we're doing here. I'm just here. I'm here so I don't get fined.
All right, I think it's a good place to end off. No, but in closing, I think this has been pretty. I've learned a lot personally, and yeah, I think there's a lot more to say on this topic, like you said.
There
So we'll get
is.
to that.
We'll get
that in
into,
the future.
we're
Yeah.
going to bore people so much with these concepts of setting up a diet, what proper macronutrient allocation looks like, different strategies for diet, how we can use things like carb cycling, proper way to cut in bulk, all that. There's just so much to talk about, but no, this was cool.
Coming soon.
I had
Yep.
fun. I had
Yeah,
so much
me too.
fun. I'm just kidding. I'm miserable.
Bye, Mom.
Inside. I'm just kidding. But yeah, all right. We're really bad at wrapping these things up, aren't we? We did good last time.